Welcome to the Juice Consumer Direct Podcast. I'm Carson Poppinger. I'm here with Justin Jump, and we have a special guest today, David Krasinski, who is the VP of Identity and Trust Solutions at TransUnion. And welcome, Dave.
Yeah, Dave, it's
Thank
good to
you
have
for
you.
having me, guys. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, David has over 20 years experience in the industry, serving clients like Apple and PayPal, Amazon, Google, and even Squeeze. We work with David as well, solving identity and trust related challenges. Dave spent much of his career and later part of his career focused on improving the voice channel specifically and increasing effectiveness and efficiency through establishing trust on the phone. And David, you and your team have done a phenomenal job with us, and we're happy to have you here today to talk about some of the issues that are faced out there in the industry and some of the things that you solve and trends that are happening. And that's what we're here to talk about today is how to improve trust in the channel on the phone. So welcome.
Thank you. And again, thanks for having me. And as you know, Carson, I could talk about this stuff for hours. So hopefully I will make it productive for your listeners and your customers and everyone who finds this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you've been a great friend of ours, and we've, like, as I was mentioning, you've been on a bunch of panels. We've been on a bunch of panels together at the different various lead generation shows that we've done. I think we were on a panel at Contact.io. We've done one at LeadsCon, and it's always a pleasure to catch up with you and chat about the industry and what's going on. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it was a nice introduction and nice building, but I'm on a lot of those panels and do a lot of like the lunch and learns and things around the conference circuit. So what you said sounds much better. At LeadsCon, I was walking down the hallway and someone said, "Hey, it's the spam tag guy." And I'm like, man, I don't really want to be known as the spam tag guy, but I guess I'll take it if that's what my reputation is from being on panels with folks like you.
Dave, how did you get into the industry to begin with?
Yeah, I'll give you the short version. So I've been with the same company, but under 5 different ownership structures since I was a young man. I've been here for about 19 years now, and started at this company called Targus Info. And especially in the lead gen circles, Targus Info has this like cult following because we were one of the first companies that came out with lead verification. So just the concept of being able to verify as someone's putting their name on a web form that they are who they say they are. We were so good at the data around linking a name and a phone number together that Targus Info at the time also started basically monopolizing caller ID services for the U.S. telecommunications network. So our shtick was we had really great data. We could link names and phone numbers together very quickly and accurately. So the phone companies came to us and said, "Hey, we need names quickly and accurately for caller ID. Why don't you guys power that?" So Targus Info started powering and again kind of monopolizing caller ID services for all of the carrier network. Targus ID was then acquired by this company, Neustar, which I think that name still resonates a little bit in certain circles. They were kind of a telco infrastructure company, and they liked the caller ID angle. Neustar was then taken private, and then subsequently the company Golden Gate Capital that took Neustar private bought Neustar a few years ago, and that's TransUnion, which everyone knows as the big credit bureau. So I've kind of been along this ride doing the same stuff in the same industry, serving the same customers. It's just had different logos on the paycheck over the last 2 decades.
Yeah, I remember that Targus Info I've been in this business since 2006 myself. Sounds like when you started with
right around there.
Back with Targus Info back then. And I remember that company and that name from just the lead gen space and lead verification and all that. And it's been nice to work with you more later in your time with Neustar and all the work that we've done there and now TransUnion. So you guys have been...
We had a lot less gray in our beards, Carson. We were younger and funner. Like we enjoyed the trips to New Orleans and Las Vegas back then.
Yeah, right. Today they're a little less fun.
Yeah, a little more grueling.
A little more grueling, yeah. We have to get the smoke out of our lungs from just walking through the casinos and all that.
That's right.
But great. So I don't know. We had some questions here. I think Justin was working through. We wanted to start some conversation around some of the challenges that you're seeing today
Yeah,
in the industry.
I think we had quite a few questions for you, Dave, and I know you had some too for us,
Sure.
and so we'd love to go through a couple of those with you. But one that we had is, what's the single biggest issue affecting telemarketing strategies today?
Yeah, you know what? I think Carson stole my thunder a little bit on his intro. The single biggest issue in a nutshell is trust, and it's lack of trust over the years with consumers effectively not trusting who's on the other end of the phone. And it's been years and years and years of the deprecation of trust, where now if someone doesn't know who's calling, they don't answer the phone very often. And obviously, for the telemarketing industry where things happen over the voice channel, that's a big deal when people don't answer the phone, whether it's to tell them their prescription's ready, whether it's to sell them something, whether it's to help them coordinate their last mile delivery. If they don't know who it is, they don't pick up the phone because of that trust issue. The funny story that kind of really is the epitome of the lack of trust was a few years ago. There was a hiker who got lost in the Rockies. He was lost and somehow still had phone service. And the rescue team, the rangers and the people that were out there trying to rescue the guy, were calling his phone. They were calling his cell phone. And the guy who was lost in the Rockies didn't answer the phone because he didn't know who was calling him. And like, if that's not the epitome of lack of trust when you don't know who's calling, like, there's no better story to illustrate people don't pick up the phone when they don't know who's calling. This guy's life was on the line, and he would rather risk his life than pick up an unknown phone call, which is really fun.
It's crazy. Carson and I were actually talking about this morning, and I'm actually the same way. I adapted this a couple of years ago. I don't remember what caused me to start doing this, but if I don't recognize the number, I don't answer it. I'll let it go to voicemail. If they leave a voicemail and that sounds important, I'll call back. If they don't, I assume, hey, doesn't mean anything to me, right? But I think there's probably been a lot of opportunities that have tried to come my way that maybe I didn't answer and had lost out on that because I don't know. It's so for me, and I was telling Carson this as well. If it's branded, if I know what's coming in, if it has a name coming across the screen, I'm generally more likely to either answer that phone call or at least interact with whatever it is that they're trying to message me about.
Yeah, I've had similar things where, you mentioned last mile delivery and things. I had one last month where they were calling me, and I was on the highway. I was like going to the airport or something, and I'm like, my call comes in, and I just happened to like pick it up. I'm like, I normally don't answer these, but I just happened to pick it up, and they were trying to schedule a delivery to the office. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I picked that up.
Yeah.
I don't know why I picked it up because I usually don't. But
Yeah.
There's those calls that you get where you're like, if you miss it, it's frustrating because it can set you back. You miss a deadline, something it doesn't, and then things are on hold or don't move forward because you couldn't, the call wasn't answered. And so, businesses that are placing calls, it's important to have some recognition there so that people will actually answer and talk to you and take action, which is what you want really as a business. Because if they don't, it's going to set their timelines back. Things are going to miss. They're going to have things stacking up in the warehouse or whatever it might be, and or stuff gets sent back to the sender if it's not handled. And so, yeah, those are some big business problems that businesses are faced with today.
Yeah, and we often get asked, like, what industries do we work with? And it's funny because, like, the answer, Carson, you mentioned Apple and Walgreens and some of those bigger companies that we work with, but it's agnostic. It's really any company that's using the voice channel, which is basically everyone still, for one reason or the other, that needs to contact their customers. And it doesn't matter the reason for the call. It's just the act of making the call. Again, it's an issue that's been exasperated. You mentioned kind of the spam tagging stuff. That's exasperated the issue even further. because not only are they just unknown callers, a few years ago with the advent of the Trace Act, when the telcos got basically fair harbor to continue or proliferate the spam tagging initiatives and even start blocking phone calls, that's when it was kind of at a pinnacle where consumers were really not answering the phone because a lot of the calls they were seeing said spam. And again, if we harken back to ourselves as consumers, we know I'm in this space. And when I see a spam caller, I can't hit the red X on my Apple Watch fast enough. I used to pick them up because I used to be like, oh, maybe it's a prospect where I could say, hey, do you know your number's tag? But generally those agents don't really care. But in most cases, I'm like every other consumer where I can't hit the red X fast enough when I see it says spam caller.
Yeah, like just like email, now today, someone was asking me the other day, well, you must get a lot of spam emails. I'm like, oh yeah, I get like 100 or so every day. A lot of them are B2B and things. And I can tell immediately just by the subject line and the first letters, there's delete, 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 delete. I'm like, not even going to open it and look at it because I know that they're not somebody that I'm working with. I don't have trust with them. They're just, it's sort of a cold outreach kind of a thing. And, it's similar over the phone. The phone is just like our time is so valuable and we don't want to spend it talking to someone that we don't know what their intent is or what the purpose of their call is. And, so helping to bridge that gap and that trust factor is, really important.
So Dave, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was going to ask. So with contact rates dropping seems like since COVID, the trend has been that those have gone down and down. With contact rates dropping, are people having more success with branding their phone calls, or is it like what's the strategy there?
Yeah, I would say that there's really a 4-pronged strategy. That companies and Squeeze is at the forefront of this. I mean, we've listened to you guys, and like Carson says, we've been on panels and been super impressed with not only the work you do with us, but the work you do to promote great dialing practices on behalf of the customers that choose to work with Squeeze, which is a big thing. So the 4-pronged strategy, in my opinion, it starts with removing the spam tags. That's table stakes at this point in time. People are so socialized to when they see anything on their phone that looks like a spam tag, whether it says spam or scam or fraud, which those are generally the ones people should ignore. Even if it says spam, they're ignoring those too. The second piece is actually testing into the right branding strategy. There's this misnomer out there that if you just put a name on a phone number, people are going to answer it. And that's not always the case. It depends on the type of the phone call. It depends on what the name says. Branding is certainly a tool to promote people to pick up the phone when done correctly. The way to figure out how to do it correctly is to test into it. There's some really great things coming around the corner, and maybe it's, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but around call use case. And we think call use case is going to be great for branding. So not only will it say Walgreens is calling you, but it will say Walgreens is calling you to remind you of a prescription, for example. So the consumer sees not only it's Walgreens, a brand they trust and interact with, but then also the use case of reminding them that their prescription's ready. So testing into the right branding strategies, phase 2. The third one's to fix your data. So we talk a lot about the outbound numbers, protecting the outbound numbers, branding the outbound numbers, but a lot of companies then neglect the data quality of the numbers they're dialing into. And if you're dialing into phone numbers that aren't linked to that person, or phone numbers that haven't made a phone call in 12 months, or phone numbers that have been reassigned recently, all of that data, that's going to promote a lot of dials that are going to be just ineffective. And then subsequently, it also is going to kind of trigger some of those spam tagging algorithms when if you dial a lot of phone numbers that are inactive phone numbers or not connected phone numbers, you look like a spammer because they don't care. Mm-hmm. And then the last one is basically not to dial, and I'll tone it down because I'm not sure of your audience, but not to dial like an a-hole. Like dial like you'd want your mother to be dialed into, which I know I've been on panels with Carson. I know you guys are proponents of this, but there's data out there that after the 10th, the 11th, the 12th hour, and it's probably not even that much, that your productivity for making those dials goes through the floor. There's no need to call someone 45 times in a week.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need.
Exactly.
So we often advocate dial into somebody like you'd want your mother to get dialed into, because that's good, responsible dialing, and that's going to help you manage your reputation. It's going to get you the productivity, et cetera. So those are kind of the four things.
I think that's a great, framework of things to look at for, what if you're going to evaluate what you're doing right now. I think, David, what you hit on there, those four are really where you need to start. That's where we started when we began working with you at Newstar, was the spam scam tagging. We started there, and what we were doing before was basically, we had like 4,000 different numbers we're rotating, and when numbers would get flagged and we could identify that this one was flagged as a spam or scam, we would pull it out of the rotation or replace it with a different number for that, for that area code or things like that. But that was like really ineffective and really labor intensive too, frankly, and not very accurate. We were always running into issues like that. And so when we learned, okay, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we're like, no, we just need to maintain our hygiene on our numbers we're using, and make sure that if they're tagged, that we can register those and remove that tagging, then we can continue using that number. And I think dialing practices like you hit on there, that's been something that we've really emphasized with what we're doing. And the thing over the last couple of years that's really changed is as we've gotten higher intent data that we're working with, and better relationship data, and using the call branding and things like that, we've gone away from a lot of the auto dialing that's been so common for the last 20 years, and doing actually one-to-one dialing that just our agent is out there making one single call at a time, and the chances of that call being answered have gone up, and we have a higher contact rate. And, we're not burning the data or creating ill will with the consumers. They're getting fewer calls over a longer period of time, and they're more prone to, not complain about or ask to be removed from the list and things like that, because we're being sort of a good steward of the list and data. And so, yeah, that's sort of how things have evolved. It's like, as trust improves, then your practices can also become more friendly too. And so, yeah.
Well, you both just shared a couple of things. Is there a silver bullet to fixing spam tagging issues, like that you would consider is the one thing that could help you the most?
In short, no. I would say no. Not even the TransUnion services. It's a culmination of kind of all of the things that Carson and I mentioned. Now, there's certainly best practices, but there's a lot of misinformation. This has been a hot button for a number of years. There's a lot of kind of startup companies that even I saw some at LeadsCon that I've never heard of before, who attempt to address this issue, and we avoid using the term whitelist, for example, because whitelist would imply there is a silver bullet. Oh, just give us your phone numbers, and it'll be all good, and you'll never have any issues. Go ahead and dial as much as you want, however you want, and that's just not how it works. So there's certainly best practices to protect your phone numbers, to instill trust, and all of those things, and a lot of things I already mentioned. There's no silver bullet. There's no whitelist. It's kind of a continually, you have to kind of continually monitor the health and reputation of your phone numbers. And when issues arise, and they do, depending on dialing practices, then you need to have a partner that has the connectivity to go fix those issues quickly for you before they impact your business.
Yeah, a huge piece of it's just more transparency. That's initially when we began talking and working together, that was my thought, was, okay, this is a more transparent approach. and we're saying, to the carriers, this is who we are, and this is what our purpose of our calls are, and so they're aware and they know that we're being a good steward, and then that transparency turns into better delivery rates and better results that we see from them, less blocking, less spam and scam tagging and things like that. But it starts with transparency. And, I think in order to have trust, you need to have transparency. And so that's a really big part of what Neustar does and delivers with that. So, one thing that you talked about, David, in your 4-point approach was, talking about different approaches for different types of consumers and things. And that's really the approach that we've taken at Squeeze, is understanding the consumer's experience. Where have they been? How have they interacted before? Where are they coming from? And then maybe they get a treatment or a prescribed path or approach that better blends with, their journey. Are they someone that's already a customer of the company? Are they someone that's expecting that call? Are they someone that's going to be inclined to answer the call if they know that it's Walgreens, for instance? Well, then we want to display Walgreens logo or not logo, but their brand name on the caller ID. And that can improve answer rates on those calls. Maybe there's calls where they're coming from, maybe they inquired about a specific, mortgage refinance or something like that. And they know that the call is coming from a solution to help them with their mortgage refinance. You may want to treat that differently. Maybe you can't put a specific brand on the caller ID, but you can let the consumer know that it's regarding that inquiry that they made, and that's going to, increase the pickup rates as well. And so a lot of it comes down to how you treat it is, where the consumer's coming from, and meet them where they're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more, Carson. And we do testing with clients all the time to try to figure out where's the sweet spot. Because let's face it, these branding solutions, the carriers are monetizing this, right? This is a revenue channel for the large carrier networks. And you guys can guess by your cell phone bills that show up in your email every month, they don't do anything for free. Call branding costs money. And a lot of the times, especially for high volume dialers, the cost can get big based on the volume of dials. So a lot of times it's just figuring out where's the sweet spot where it makes sense economically. What's the point of return where after the X dial, maybe it doesn't make sense to pay a few cents to brand the call. Maybe then you just drop back to just spam protection. But certainly the naming in and of itself is a great tool to drive those contact rates and then the downstream impact of getting someone to pick up the phone. So sales rates, conversion rates, collection rates, all the things that people dial for. But it's using that name as a tool. There's certain customers that they'll put the actual brand name on the first few phone calls. So we're the brand that this customer has interacted with. It's the name of the brand on the first few phone calls. On calls 4, 5, 6, after that brand's been populated, they start using things like the reason for the call. Hey, it's your project advisor calling, not the brand name, so that they can kind of continually manicure the contact rates throughout that dialing experience until they get someone to pick up the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great approach, and that's something that we've taken as well with what we're doing, because maybe they're not going to answer for the brand, but maybe they're going to answer because they think there's a purpose behind the call or something like that. And it's really just trying to reach that consumer. Just like SMS, we were talking with a company this morning who was saying, hey, we're leading with SMS, but then by leading with SMS as an outreach for an inquiry, they're going to see a higher opt-out rate with those SMS messages, which is going to prevent you from being able to make calls or reach them. Maybe you want to bump that SMS approach to after the phone calls that you've made where you haven't been able to reach them. Let them know, hey, we're trying to reach you, and maybe the consumer's more comfortable with an SMS contact strategy than talking over the phone, which a lot of younger people are today. And so it's sometimes it's a mix and it's a blend, and it's the call sequence and the pattern that you do. So,
Is there any value in what I had mentioned earlier? Somebody leaving a voicemail, right? I don't know who this person is that's calling. However, they leave a voicemail. Is there any I don't know, I guess data behind that in regards to if that's helping or if that's hurting or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think the general take is it's better to use Carson's point of transparency. It's better to announce or inform later that you're the company that's calling than doing it blind. The worst thing you could do is dial into somebody and have the same experience that they've had since the advent of the iPhones, where it's a black screen and a white phone number and a red button and a green button and the option to swipe to answer. It's been that way for 15 years. And if that's the experience that you're promoting to people you're trying to reach, you're not going to have good results. So having something is better than nothing. I'm of the personal opinion that people don't listen to voicemails that much anymore. I'm probably one of them where like maybe I'll read the voicemail when the iPhone tells me what it is.
Yeah.
I don't generally go in and listen to them anymore. But we do have anecdotes that having a leave behind works. And I'll give you an example, and it's more specific to branding than voicemail, but I think it's applicable, guys. For the collections industry. So the reason they're dialing is obviously to tell people, you owe me some money, and I'm the guy calling to get that money from you. Those aren't generally phone calls that people tend to want to answer, whether they know who it is or they don't, right? They're not looking to answer those collection calls. So in the collections industry, we'll see that branding actually has an inverse impact on contact rates, where obviously if you announce that, hey, I'm calling you to collect on this money that you owe me, guy, most of those people will look at it and be like, well, I'm not answering that.
Yeah.
But if that happens a few times and that brand's there and they're like, okay, this bank or this credit card company or this collections company, they've called me a few times. I'm going to log into the portal. I'm going to go make a payment, and I'm going to get them to stop calling me, even though they never pick up the phone. So from the collections perspective, that leave behind of, this brand is calling me, and most people know, like, if I owe money to this bank and the bank's calling me, it's probably because they want me to pay the bill. They look further downstream and see, well, our dollars collected and our promises to pay on the accounts that we branded are way more performant than the ones that we dialed where it was the black screen and the phone number.
Yeah.
And it was just the branding leave behind where they looked in their phone book or looked at their phone and they saw, oh, the bank's calling me. I better go pay the bill to get them to stop calling me.
I've even ran into it, Dave, where they'll send me a piece of mail, right? And so I know that they've been calling, but then they send a piece of mail, and in the forefront, as I actually read it, they're describing, hey, if you'll just pick up, like, let's work something out. And then obviously that makes you a little bit more in tune to actually want to answer that next phone call. But interesting, I guess all the different avenues somebody will try to go through to get you to answer the phone call.
You can get that incremental lift too. Like you mentioned, maybe they're not going to pick up and transact with you over the phone, but you're going to get a lift from just that, that impression with the consumer, with the person you're trying to reach, that's going to get them to take action in another form or a different channel, I think is pretty interesting. And I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons, guys, that we advocate for and really strongly advocate for. So for the spam tag removal, if a company just wants to, if they say, we know our phone numbers say spam likely, and we want to get rid of those because intuitively everybody knows that no one's answering.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for the KPI of contact rate. We're generally like, that's a good KPI. If your phone says spam now and you get rid of the spam, you should look at it if more people are picking up, and they're going to. Everyone knows that. You almost don't need to test it anymore. We advocate not looking at contact rate for branding because it doesn't tell a full enough story in most cases. A lot of times contact rates stay flat or they go down depending on the type of call, like collections, for example. We always say you have to look further downstream. You have to look at the conversion rate or that promise to pay or dollars collected.
Transactions.
Because what you're going to get is the people that do pick up, they see the number, they make a conscious decision to answer that phone because they see who is calling, and they're engaged. So you get the intent of the population that is answering the phone. They're going to be a much more engaged customer. So we always advocate, don't look at contact rates. You may get lower contact rates, but the people that actually answer the phone are going to convert at a much higher clip.
We've seen that in mortgage, where maybe branding a specific mortgage company on the outbound call may not give you a lift in the contact rate. You may see a lower contact rate, but then those that we do speak with have a much higher intent, and they're willing to transact, and they're going to pull through and transact and do it because they're like, hey, there's a purpose here. I want to talk to this company, and I'd like to refi my loan. I'd like to do a home equity line of credit, or open a new account, or whatever it might be. Purchase. I'm buying a new home, and I need to talk to these people. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you need to look further downstream because it's deeper than contact rate, and it's more about sales conversion. And that's one of the things that we're always looking at, because as an outbound contact center for generating leads and sales conversions, or sales opportunities rather, we're focused on the entire sales experience and helping to pull more dollars from the channel. That's really the ultimate goal for everyone, is not just to generate a transfer, it's to generate a transaction. And using a tool like this with Newstar can help lead to that, when you use the right way. So
it's TransUnion, Carson, just in case the
gosh.
TransUnion overlords are listening.
We're both
Newstar
too old here.
Is a TransUnion owned entity.
Yeah, TransUnion, and who I also we know so great fondly from the credit ranking and FICO scores.
Yeah. Dave, any questions for us that you wanted to get out?
Yeah. So I talked about my 4 pillars, which was, just to refresh, it was fixing the spam tags, testing into the correct branding strategy based on the types of calls, fixing your data. So basically enhancing or fixing your dial file. And then to use my dial like you'd want your mother to get dialed into. I know you guys dial like you'd want, at least my mother, I'd want my mother to get dialed into. Around fixing your data, what are the things that you find are meaningful when you're looking at our dial file? And how do we help our strategy when we dial into these customers? What types of things are you doing around data hygiene and lead verification? Or is that something that your clients are doing for you?
Yeah, we actually partner with a number of groups, and we're providing solutions as well to help enhance the data hygiene and as part of that process, there's best practices that we recommend that our partners use. There's companies, in fact, that we're going to be talking to in an upcoming podcast, like Active Prospect, that do a lot of good lead verification through Trusted Form and products like that, Lead Conduit. And we also use some products that help with numbers changing and things like that to update their database with making sure we're not calling records that have moved or canceled their phone number. And so we use a number of services like that we recommend. And then on top of that, we're enhancing the process by developing technologies to help generate a better result and a better contact rate, introducing AI in our call analysis and looking at customer sentiment and things like that. So those are things that we're looking at. Technology is definitely evolving, and you really need to be on top of it to harness it, because it's moving at a very fast rate, and we want to leverage those things and use it to improve the sales experience for our clients that we work with. That's really our focus at Squeeze, is improving that sales experience.
Yeah, I think when I first came into Squeeze, the one thing that stood out to me was Carson's very intrigued with evolving and making sure that we're staying relevant in the space and that we're following through on laws and guidelines and compliance and everything that we need to in order to stay at the top. So that gives me confidence. I think being a part of that and be able to watch his process day in and day out and talk about those things openly and discuss how we're going to continuously evolve.
And we're big fans of the work that you guys do. In the lead gen world, so we talked a lot about testing into the right call branding strategy. And there's always, with lead generation companies, there's the types of traffic. There's the organic traffic versus the affiliate traffic, and different sources, different lead generators that are providing these leads. And there's often questions of, does call branding work for lead generation? And we know Squeeze is at the forefront of doing some of this testing and rolling this out to your customers. What's your thoughts on where call branding works specific to the lead gen industry, and where does it work, and maybe where have you seen it not work? Because I imagine it doesn't always work as planned.
Yeah, I think call branding works. Call branding works phenomenally with customer relationships where you have an established business relationship, EBR data. I think those specific, use cases where you've already transacted with the customer, and there's some brand recognition. I think that is really effective in those cases. I know that there are some, lead aggregators and some websites that are not branded that are, we had the one-to-one consent that almost rolled out this year in January, and that was sort of held back. They're still recommended to make sure that you're not, working with or purchasing data that's overshared or oversold out there. There are people that are, still generating leads that they're, they're selling the record 8, 10, 12, 15 times, who knows how many. Then it goes to a list broker and things like that. And, if you're working with shared records and shared data, call branding may not be the best first approach or attempt, but making sure that you're working with data that's from a source that is not going to be abused or have some ill will generated by the fact that it's oversold, and then but call branding is really effective for EBR type data and customer relationship data.
I also think higher intent lead gen funnels, right? Like if I have the intent to actually purchase or buy or do whatever it may be, if it's branded, I'm probably more inclined to actually want to pick up the phone and do something with it.
Right. Okay. I think it's in line with what I had expected from you guys. We hear about speed to lead a lot. And TransUnion has this really unique capability to provide call windows. So what's the optimal time to call somebody in a 2-hour window at any point of the day? And a lot of science behind it, and findings that if you dial into somebody during that call window, they're more likely to pick up the phone. You're more likely to get the interaction that you want. Where that often falls down in the lead gen space is around speed to lead, where we have to dial this person pretty immediately when we first see them to hopefully get the result. So call window is not going to work in every scenario. That hiker on the mountain in Colorado, you don't want to use the call window for that guy. Kind of important to reach him the time you're trying to call him. But what about that call window data in the lead generation industry? Do you guys think that would have any applicability, or does speed to lead inhibit the lead gen industry from using something like a call window?
I always say that, generally the outbound calls we're making are convenient for us when we're making them. They're not necessarily convenient for the consumer to when they want to be called. In speed to lead scenarios where they fill out a form right now, I do think that's when they're interested. They're inquiring right now. It's top of mind. So getting a hold of them right away before they can, move on to something else or someone else gets a hold of them, I think is super important. Call window is an interesting one. I don't know. It's like I think about my own my own habits and behavior. There may be particular times of the day when I'm generally less busy. I know for my own schedule, I generally don't schedule a lot of early morning meetings myself. I usually schedule things later in the morning so I can get my day started, get my workout in, and then I, get to the office around 9:30 or so, 10 o'clock. We have our own habits and our own lifestyle that we're in, but I don't know that dictates when I'd be more likely to answer the phone or not. The one thing that I am super interested in, I think is really valuable, is data around people that are answering calls, period. Like if there's data that in a population of 1 million people, these folks pick up the phone and they answer the phone, that's, I think, really valuable because they're people that are comfortable talking on the phone. They're comfortable picking up the phone. I know when we have data of people that we have called who answered the phone previously, the answer rate on a follow-up call is like 80 to 90%. The contact rate on a previously answered call is generally through the roof, the highest contact rate of any data we can call. And so if you have data aggregated where these folks are answering calls, they pick up the phone, I think that there's a lot of value in that, because generally with outbound calling on a mass scale, a lot of times, unfortunately, there's a phrase that's used. It's like more meat for the grinder, and a lot of times we just want more meat for the grinder kind of a thing. But as I've mentioned, with higher intent data and better relationship type data, you can really dial that strategy back and you can be a little more surgical with your approach. But that's something that, I don't know, that's the way I look at it anyway.
I remember, so I worked in the solar industry for a little bit, and the speed to lead there, like we would call immediately. And what I found was generally somebody's already engaged with the content, and so it's a lot easier for me to jump into that conversation and make a sale out of it than if it was, they submitted it and then 30 minutes to an hour later or longer, maybe halfway through the day or the next day, me getting in contact with them and selling them, that conversion went down drastically. So I'm a huge believer in, the right when that form gets submitted, if you can jump on the call and get them sold, then do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what we're finding is for again, just like call branding, for certain applications, call window can make sense. So if you're dialing aged leads, for example, where you haven't talked to them or engaged with them recently, maybe picking the right time to call that person makes more sense, where it's not a race to get somebody on the phone, where you could be more thoughtful around when you're calling at the same time that you're protecting that your phone numbers and making sure it's the right person and all of the other things that you guys have to do. Guys, I could talk about this probably for another 2 or 3 hours, as Carson knows. I'm mindful of your time. We'll have to do that one at the next conference maybe. But what else could I help with today? Anything?
David, I just want to say it's been a pleasure here chatting with you about this. You got such a great background and amount of experience in the space, and the work that you're doing is really helping us, so many marketers out there, improve their processes and create better practices and generate better consumer experiences. So I just want to say thanks for being here with us today. I'll wrap up. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, Justin.
No, it's been a pleasure, Dave, and sorry it's taken so long for us to get you on here and finally speaking with you, but we appreciate you greatly.
I appreciate you guys having me. I'll come back whenever you want me.
Let's do it.
Again, I could talk about this stuff all the time and a lot of other stuff too, guys. So if you ever are looking for a guest, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Great.
Thanks so much, Dave. You've been watching the Juice Consumer Direct podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to us.
Thank you.